Discover the next level in entertainment. Sky Cable's Evo Box is the latest product that lets you access over 190 channels, built-in streaming apps, and more than 5,000 downloadable apps and games. Get yours now at mysky.com.ph/skyevo or visit the Sky Zones in Ayala Center and Gaisano Grand Mall, Lapu-Lapu.
Welcome to Power Women. I'm Jobert Ocal. Joining us today is an executive director at the Ramon Aboitiz Foundation Incorporated in Cebu and a former youth leadership development manager of Ayala Foundation Incorporated, Ms. Marisol Delantar-Gonzalvo. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Sol, and welcome to Power Women. Happy International Women's Month to you.
Yes, happy Women's Month. I am so happy to be here. Anything about women and empowerment, no, and I'm
Thank you, Miss. All right, I'm looking at your life. Actually, your background, you are quite a multifaceted woman. Different areas of expertise, including youth development, program development, even brand management, corporate communications, and well, interestingly to me, you're also certified Leave No Trace trainer and wilderness first responder. Well, at least in Cebu, because of what used to be called the RAFI Cool Adventure Camp, you are quite popularly known for your adventure education. What led you to endeavors, Ms. Sol?
Well, first, I have very early exposure in leadership development, and I've always valued being part of civic conversations ever since I was in college, high school and college. And so that's really where the interest was. As a student leader myself, I was always interested in learning from other people, learning from their experiences, and how I can also be part of a bigger collective effort, for society, for the community. So I think that's where it all started. And of course, as a natural course, action in life, I've always picked my choice of a job would be an intersection of what I feel passionately about, where I can contribute, and of course will give me some financial stability. And of course, is very happy to right away jump into this role with the Ayala Group earlier on after college. So eventually I joined the Ayala Foundation, handling the Ayala Young Leaders program. And then from there, I decided to move back to Cebu. After 8 years with the Ayala Group, moved back to Cebu. And that's how I ended up with RAFI. And it's Aboitiz Foundation that I got exposed to all of these, the outdoor education, the adventure education programs, experiential learning as a means of leadership development. So that's the quick summary of how I ended up where I am in RAFI.
You mentioned the Ayala Young Leaders Congress. So this is one of the most prominent leadership development programs in the country today. And you had firsthand experience, well, not just experience, but actually firsthand in developing the program. How does it feel to be helping mold the country's futures and now one among the ones leading us in the nation?
First, I really started out in that journey with the Ayala Young Leaders Congress as a delegate myself. So when I was in my last year in college, I was part of the student council. So I delegate to the Congress, and then after that, as siguro a natural progression was to move to Manila to also be part of the team handling the Congress. I would say that it's very challenging because as a leadership development program, you always had to innovate, and you always had to think of the biggest issues, that you want young leaders to focus on, and to surface this and have a good conversation about this. So that's always the challenge: be relevant, and then also talking about later on espousing and development as my line of work. Again, that's another challenge, no? And but what I really loved about how it turned out was that from a national program, I moved back to Cebu, and I am training Cebuanos, no, training or Cebuano young leaders, and to me it's so beautiful to be talking about concepts, talking about leadership concepts in Bisaya. No, I found it very liberating. And at the same time, very fulfilling as well, because we do acknowledge that we have a big role to play. No, the young people have a very big role to play, and we want to be part of molding them as they become leaders themselves.
What has been for you the most challenging part about developing the youth as far as their leadership potentials are concerned?
First, you have to be to meet them where they are. If they watch K-drama, what do they want to play? No, if they do all of this online games, you have to be doing these as well. Well, not really to an extent where you also have these as your hobbies, but I feel like you should be able to connect. Older and wiser, no, these are no longer our interests, but of course there has to be an effort to stay connected to young people.
Speak their language, so to
yes,
speak.
speak their language, meet them where they are, do their games, know what they are reading, what they're listening on Spotify, what shows are they watching on Netflix. No, so we have to connect to them that way. The other I feel the other challenge would also be to be very familiar also with social media, TikTok, and all of this, not Instagram, because that's where they are. And if you're like an introvert or not really as much of a public person, no, but thankfully I'm an extrovert and I talk a lot. So conversations need to happen in these avenues, no, and we have to meet them where they are, and we also need to understand the issues that they have, no, issues like mental health, no, and in my generation, Gen X, it was not much of an issue,
Right.
and now with well-being as really an important issue for them, we also need to understand these issues, and we need to address them, no, with them in consultation with people.
How do you explain to them the balance between idealism and realism? Because I understand that during youth development congresses and lectures and seminar, we always infuse the delegates, the participants, with what are ideas. But of course, when we go out into what they call the real world, things are different. So how do you explain that to them during these engagements?
During our interactions with them, well, you'd be surprised how a lot of these young leaders in general have a very good sense, a moral compass, I would say. They already have a good sense of what are the realities. I think that the difficulty for me at the start was that younger generations tend to really be exposed to a lot of stimulus, so they see all of this media, all of these images, perspectives online. They see it every day, every day in social media, and there is a tendency to compare, like especially at that time pre-pandemic, a lot. So I also want to travel, or I also want to have the things that others my age are doing, have the same goals, and the tendency to compare. And I think for us, particularly in the Ramon Aboitiz Foundation Center for Leaders, in Cool Adventure Camp, what we do is we let them come face to face with their fears, their dragons. We call it dragons, in Cool Adventure Camp. And when these experiences are grounded on a very real encounter with their fear, they tend to also more uh, pragmatically, I would say, they're better at expressing the feelings, the experience, what they think about things. No, when they come face to face with these challenges and difficulties. So to me, experiential learning, the challenge ropes courses, the expeditions are one of the best tools. No, so fast forward to the pandemic. Because we can no longer do the trekking and all of these
Right.
wonderful outdoor activities that are very effective, no, in teaching all leaders. We now go to our virtual learning sessions, and I guess what has been very helpful and very important in our virtual learning sessions are the listening sessions, no, the moments where we just ask them to really express where they are, what is their current mindset, their challenges, and you'd be surprised that they themselves, as peers, are able to provide solutions and share also what they are doing to cope with all of these challenges. So very amazing how peer-to-peer can be very powerful at this time, especially in a pandemic.
Who are easier to train or teach, Miss Sol? Men or women?
I would say there's no difference. I would say that if you ask me now, with our virtual learning sessions, it is harder to train the older generations. No, you have the boomers who are still figuring out how to use all of this technology. It's a challenge, so you have to be very specific. You have to be very patient when we use all of these engagement tools online. You have to show them the link, the QR code, and the step by step process. But for young people, they're the ones who help you. I have this experience. I have my 11-year-old, and they're doing online classes, right? And I also they use Zoom. I also use Zoom. But my 11-year-old would come to me and say, you know what? Teacher, I know how to do the shortcut for this. This is how you change this. So I'm really amazed. 11-year-old teaching, no?
Yeah, they are tech natives.
And it's very amazing. The younger the generation, they're very resilient. They can switch technology. They can switch routines. But for the older ones, shifting to work from home, we have a harder time because our routines are all set, and we have our own comfort zones, no, and boundaries.
Speaking of which, Miss Sol, since you are interacting largely with young, what are your thoughts? Because they say that the generation today is a very impatient generation. They want things to be very instant and fast. But of course, when we talk about leadership development, for one, it takes patience, a certain degree of maturity to be able to accomplish some tasks. What are your thoughts on this?
I feel like for the younger generations, it's a longer process for them to arrive at really self-awareness or understanding themselves as a function of all of this exposure to choices. So many people you want to be, people you look up to, people you see in social media, and there's so many. Unlike before, when you are asked, who do you want to be? It's really doctor, teacher, and it can be very specific. But now you have all of these choices, like I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be a data scientist. All of these things were never existed before, So I would say harder for them to sit still as well. Mindfulness, it's a gift. It's a gift if young people are able to really sit down and have moments of reflection and maybe discernment on who they are, their struggles. I think it's a gift for younger people to have that's the maturity I think that you're talking about. But I guess what is fortunate for this younger generation now, there's so options, for them to develop their leadership skills, to be on track with their leadership journey. We have all of these productivity tools. We You have all of these available webinars, very good content that's free, that's on demand, and very engaging that they can access. And I myself, I think that's one of the good things that came out. I feel that's one of the good things that came out from this pandemics, because suddenly
Right. Yeah.
so easy to access all of this content. And I think that's something that young people can really access now. All of these certifications are available online, and even conferences, before you need to fly to the US or somewhere to be part of very good conferences that have really good speakers, no, that provide good resources. But now they're all online. They're also cheaper. That it's a blessing. It's a blessing to be in this generation, this younger generation.
If we may go down history a bit, Ms. Sol, if I'm not mistaken, you won as president of the University of San Carlos Supreme Student Council with with the highest voter turnout in history by far during your time. How did that feel for you at that point? What kind of pressure did that put on you?
Yeah, it's one of the, it's really one of the, I would say, life-changing experiences in college. First, I was really a hesitant student leader. No, I really started out asking myself if I really wanted this. I mean, is this something I can do? But honestly, I was part of the USC dance troupe then, and I ran for student council. I won in the student council. So I said I had to give up because, while USC dance troupe to me was something very exciting, and I love to dance, but there was this commitment that I made, no, when I ran. So I think that was the start of really having a more a perspective of service. Was really as a leader was to serve. And so when I ran, and I ran against a law student, and in the history of USC, law students, when they run for student council, they're always a landslide win. But I was happy. I think there was a reason, a good reason that happened to me. But it was really pressure. If you're asking me what it was pressure. To be president of the student council. At that time, issues like fraternities and sororities were also big, no? And so we really have to get along with all of these organizations, bring them together, create consensus. I think that was very challenging, but at the same time also really my first experience, no? To look at all of these leadership challenges in the eye and say, you can do this, or ask for help. Yeah, so I think that's a really that experience now in my life.
What kind of takeaway did that experience give you moving forward as you join the professional world?
Okay, first, as I moved from college I moved to Makati to work, and so really, I think one of the things that I realized was that there was a bigger world outside of Cebu, and that there were also many opportunities outside of Cebu, and that you can be whoever you want to be. No, and in Makati, even if you're not from one of like LaSalle or Ateneo, even if you're from Cebu and from USC, that you have a good chance at excelling, at being a good professional. My biggest takeaway with the first job is that it shapes your morals and your values later on, your professional your principles, as a professional is shaped by your first job. So I took my first job very seriously, and then moving on, to other roles. I feel like my biggest takeaway is we're always a learner. We should always learn. We can never be, and we need a good team. Always we need a good team always to work with us to make sure that we deliver.
Speaking of being a member of a team, so when you are faced with a fork on the road and your decisions will affect others, what are your considerations in arriving at a decision?
I always ask myself, will I regret making this decision? But really seriously, when really faced with big decisions, especially if there are other people's lives no at stake, I always ask myself if this is the best version of me making that decision. With always having assumptions in check, if these assumptions are just my personal assumptions, or these are what the rest of those who are affected by the decision think. I always take a consultative stance. I like asking people, especially if they are affected by specific decisions, no? What's their take on it. But of course, ultimately, I make my own decision. But yes, yeah, how what they think, consult. But also at the end of it is asking myself, is this the best is this the best soul, no, that's making the decision?
I really like to hear your thoughts on this one. They say that when you invest in women, your community and the world. Your thoughts on this?
Well, I was asked more or less the same question last year around Women's Month as well, no, and I shared this answer, which I will also share now, no. So I feel that women play an important role in nurturing communities and in fostering growth, no. It seems like a more intrinsic trait of women, no? And in looking after the well-being, in looking after women, we also look after the well-being of those around them, because when we empower women to be at their best, no, we also enrich the relationships that they hold dear, and ultimately we also enable the communities that they serve. So women really are nurturers by nature, and so when we empower women, we empower relationships, their communities, and at the same time the values and the goals that they hold dear. So that for me is a women empowerment.
Very nice. Finally, with you today, Ms. Sol, what's your message to young girls who are still finding their way in the world?
Well, it's never going to be easy, of course, but we should be comfort. We should find comfort in the fact that it never gets easy, but we get better at it. So the more we try, and the more we break the glass ceiling, the more we prove that as women we are assigned to specific mountains to show the world that it can be moved, you know, and that women can lead. Yeah, I love that hashtag now. No? Hashtag women can lead. Young girls can dream. They can dream big, and they can make it happen.
Ms. Marisol Delantar-Gonzalvo, thank you so much and happy International Women's Month to you.
Thank you, Jobert. Thank you very much.
I'm Jobert Ocao. This is Power Women Season 4.